Blood dripped from my nose onto the diner's linoleum, my vision blurring as Sergeant Daniel Hayes's fist hovered inches from my face, his sneer twisting with cruel delight. "Call whoever you want, hero," he spat, slamming my phone onto the table as two other officers pinned my arms, their cuffs biting into my wrists. The diner's patrons stared, some smirking, others silent, while a young waitress's shaky hands clutched her phone, recording the nightmare unfolding. I'm Lena Washington, a 36-year-old Army veteran, 5 feet 9 inches, 170 pounds, with a Distinguished Service Cross for saving 18 soldiers in Fallujah, now reduced to a punching bag in Birmingham, Alabama, because of my black skin. My fingers, trembling with rage and pain, dialed a number I'd sworn never to use, General Margaret Holmes, the woman who'd called me a daughter after I pulled her son from a burning convoy. As her voice answered, sharp and commanding, the room froze, and I knew this fight was just beginning. I'd walked into Ruby's diner that chilly November morning, 46 degrees Fahrenheit, craving a $5.50 pancake stack to warm me after another night in my 2003 Chevy Impala, my home since my apartment was condemned 5 months ago. The diner, a 55-seat joint 7 miles from Birmingham's downtown, hummed with the clink of forks and low murmurs. I'd grown used to the stares. My faded jacket, my uncombed hair marking me as trouble in a city where black folks like me, 10% of the 200,000 residents, were often seen as out of place. I'd served 14 years in the Army, faced death in Iraq, but nothing prepared me for the daily suspicion back home. To cope, I'd started a poetry workshop for veterans, a safe space where we poured our scars into words, and I'd been drafting a new piece about resilience, hoping to share it at our next meeting. It was my lifeline, a way to remind myself I was more than the world's assumptions. The trouble started when 3 officers strutted in, led by Hayes, a wiry man with cold blue eyes and a reputation I'd heard whispered at the VA, ruthless, untouchable, thriving on power. His partners, Officers Jamal Carter and Nathan Reed, followed, their faces blank but their hands ready. Hayes zeroed in on me, his gaze like a predator's, and I felt the air shift, heavy with intent. He loomed over my booth, his voice dripping with mockery. "ID, now. You look like someone we're after, black female, your build." My heart pounded, but I kept my tone even, years of training holding me steady. "What's the reason, sir?" His smirk widened, a glint of pleasure in his eyes. "Reason? You're in my town, that's enough." The words hit like a slap, but I reached for my wallet, announcing each move to avoid giving him an excuse. Before I could comply, Hayes swiped my water glass, shattering it on the floor, the splash soaking my jeans. "Clumsy me," he said, his laugh a blade. I stood to shake off the water, and Carter lunged, shouting, "She's resisting." Reed grabbed my shoulder, twisting me down, and Hayes's fist connected with my nose, pain exploding as blood gushed. The cuffs snapped on, too tight, and I hit the floor, my cheek scraping the tiles. Hayes leaned close, his breath hot. "Nobody cares about a drifter like you." But he was wrong. Maria Gonzalez, the 27-year-old Puerto Rican waitress who'd served me with a shy smile, was filming, her phone hidden behind a napkin. Her eyes, wide with fear, held a fire I recognized. She was risking everything, her job, her safety, to capture the truth. Hayes's cruelty wasn't random, it was calculated, a performance for the diner's mostly white patrons, some of whom nodded as if I deserved this. I'd seen his type before. Men who wore authority like armor, using it to crush anyone who didn't fit their world. At the VA, veterans whispered about Hayes's hunts, targeting black and Latino residents, his badge a shield for prejudice. Yet here, in this moment, his power felt absolute, and my hope flickered. I thought of my poetry group, how I'd told them words could fight battles, but words felt useless now. Then Maria's voice broke through, soft but defiant, "This isn't right," and I clung to it like a lifeline. She was a single mom, I'd learned from her earlier chat, saving for her son's future, yet she stood firm, her phone steady despite Hayes's glare. They yanked me up, my nose throbbing, blood staining my shirt. Hayes patted me down, his hand lingering, and I felt him slip something into my pocket. He pulled out a plastic bag, waving it triumphantly. "What's this, huh? Our war heroes got secrets." My stomach dropped. "That's not mine," I said, my voice steady despite the panic. "You planted it." Carter chuckled, but Reed's eyes flickered with unease, a crack in his loyalty I noted. Hayes's grin was pure venom. "Keep lying, sweetheart. Makes my day." The lie was so bold, so practiced, it stole my breath. I'd faced ambushes, but this betrayal, by those meant to serve, cut deeper than any bullet. Maria kept filming, her courage a beacon in the diner's haze of complicity. I thought of the kids I'd mentored at a community coding camp, teaching them to build apps for change, telling them to never back down. Now, I had to live that truth. "I want my phone call," I said, cutting through Hayes's laughter. He shoved the phone at me, his voice mocking. "Go on, call your fairy godmother. Nobody's saving you." My fingers, slick with blood, dialed General Holmes's number, a lifeline from a ceremony years ago when she'd pressed her card into my hand, her eyes fierce with gratitude. The phone rang, and I prayed it still worked. When her voice answered, Holmes speaking, the diner's air shifted, Hayes's smirk faltering like a candle in a storm. I spoke fast, my voice cracking but clear. "General, it's Lena Washington. Birmingham PD's got me cuffed, planted evidence, and I'm hurt." Hayes lunged for the phone, but I twisted away, pouring out the story: assault, lies, blood. Holmes's tone turned to steel, loud enough for all to hear. "Put an officer on, now." Hayes grabbed the phone, his face ashen. "Sergeant Daniel Hayes, Birmingham PD. Who's this?" Holmes's response was a thunderclap. "General Margaret Holmes, U.S. Army, 5-star. I want your badge number, your chief's contact, and your body cameras locked. Lena Washington saved my son's life. You'll release her, get her medical care, and await a JAG team, or the DOJ will bury you." Hayes stammered, his bravado crumbling, but Holmes cut him off. "You have 45 minutes. Maria's phone kept rolling, capturing Hayes's panic, Carter's frozen stare, and Reed's futile attempt to unlock his body camera, now remotely secured by Holmes's team. Ruby, the diner's owner, stepped forward, her face pale. "Officers, please, this is too much." Hayes ignored her, but Maria's nod told me her video was safe. My nose ached, my wrists burned, but a fire kindled in my chest. I'd been invisible, a black veteran dismissed as a nobody, but now, someone heard me. Holmes's voice was my anchor, Maria's courage my shield. As they dragged me to the patrol car, I thought of my coding camp kids, how I'd taught them to rewrite their futures. Today, I was rewriting mine, not just for me, but for every soul crushed by Hayes's hate. The car door slammed, but I held my gaze steady, knowing this wasn't defeat, it was the spark of a reckoning, a fight for justice that would shake Birmingham to its core. The fluorescent buzz of the Birmingham police station felt like a drill in my skull as I sat in a conference room, my wrists raw from the cuffs now removed, a paramedic's bandage covering my swollen nose. I'm Lena Washington, a 36-year-old Army veteran, still reeling from Sergeant Daniel Hayes's assault at Ruby's diner, his planted evidence a shadow over my future. General Margaret Holmes's JAG team, led by Captain Aisha Patel, had turned the tide, but Hayes's cold stare lingered in my mind, his promise of control unbroken. He wasn't just a rogue cop, he was a symbol of a system that thrived on silencing black voices like mine, his power rooted in fear and connections I'd only begun to glimpse. Maria Gonzalez's video, now viral with #JusticeForLena trending across Birmingham, had sparked a fire, but I knew Hayes would strike back, his ego a coiled snake. As I sipped water, my hands trembling, I thought of my coding camp kids, how I'd taught them to build apps for justice, and wondered if I could still be their hero when I felt so broken. The fight wasn't just mine anymore. Maria, Ruby, even Officer Jamal Carter's fleeting doubt were threads in a tapestry of resistance, and I had to hold fast. Captain Patel's voice cut through my haze, her clipboard a shield as she briefed me. Lena, we've got 35 complaints against Hayes' unit, buried by Chief Laura Mitchell. Your case cracked the dam. The number hit me like a punch, 35 lives, likely black and Latino, crushed under Hayes' badge, their stories silenced by a department that protected its own. I thought of Maria, her shaky footage exposing Hayes' cruelty, and the price she was paying. Her phone buzzed with threats, anonymous texts warning her to delete the video or lose her son's safety. As a single mom, her courage was a lighthouse, but I saw the fear in her eyes when she'd visited me earlier, her voice low. Lena, they know where I live. Guilt twisted my gut, she'd acted when others hadn't, and now her life was unraveling. I vowed to protect her, though I barely knew how to protect myself, my PTSD whispering doubts from Fallujah's ashes. Hayes' retaliation was swift, his influence snaking through Birmingham's power structure. Mayor Leonard Brooks, his cousin, appeared on local news, his polished smile masking venom as he called me unstable, citing my homelessness and PTSD to paint me as a liar. The smear stung, erasing my Distinguished Service Cross, my 14 years of service, reducing me to a stereotype. Brooks's words weren't just personal, they were a signal, rallying those who saw black veterans like me as threats. Ruby's diner faced boycotts, its windows smeared with graffiti reading, "Traitor." Ruby, the owner, stood pale behind her counter, her silence at my arrest haunting her. I should have stopped them, she'd whispered to me, her eyes wet with regret. I saw her struggle, a white woman in her 50s wrestling with decades of looking away, now forced to choose a side. Her diner, once a neutral haven, was now a battleground, and I prayed she'd find the courage to fight. But Birmingham wasn't silent. My coding camp teens, led by 16-year-old Malik, launched a crowdfunding campaign for Maria, raising $5,000 in 48 hours to cover her lost wages. Malik, who'd built an app to map safe routes for black kids, visited me with a shy grin, his phone showing the campaign's success. "We got you, Ms. Lena," he said, and I choked back tears, his faith in me a bomb. Veterans from my poetry workshop rallied outside the station, their signs reading, "Honor Lena's service," their military bearing a quiet rebuke to Hayes' lies. General Holmes, her voice thick with resolve, arranged military commissary deliveries to keep Ruby's diner stocked, her guilt for my struggles fueling her fight. "We take care of our own," she told Ruby, who nodded, tears falling as soldiers unloaded crates. These acts of defiance, small but fierce, were stitches in a wound I hadn't realized was so deep. A new spark emerged, a community mural project, started by local artists and my coding camp kids, painting Lena's fight on a wall near Ruby's diner. The mural showed me in my army uniform, poetry book in hand, surrounded by Birmingham's black youth, their faces lifted with hope. Malik's app now included a feature to document the mural's progress, uniting the city's creatives in a visual cry for justice. The mural wasn't just art, it was a declaration that I wasn't invisible, that Birmingham's black community wouldn't be erased. Yet Hayes' shadow loomed. Officer Jamal Carter, who'd stood silent during my arrest, leaked internal memos to Patel, exposing a quota system targeting black residents, with Hayes earning bonuses for each arrest. Carter's act, born of guilt for his complicity, was a crack in Hayes' armor, but it put him at risk. I saw his conflict, a young black officer torn between loyalty and truth, his quiet nod to me a promise of more to come. Hayes' desperation grew, his retaliation personal and vicious. He'd cornered Maria at her apartment, his voice low but lethal. "Delete the video, or your kid pays." Maria, trembling, recorded the threat, her defiance a fire I admired but feared for. Patel played me the audio, Hayes' voice chilling in its calm, a man who believed he was untouchable. But Carter's memos, Maria's recording, and the mural's growing fame were tightening the noose. Chief Mitchell, cornered by Patel's evidence, admitted to burying complaints, her face ashen as she handed over files. "I thought I was protecting the department," she said, her excuse hollow. I saw her shame, a woman who traded integrity for stability, now facing the wreckage of her choices. The mural's unveiling drew hundreds, veterans and teens chanting, "Justice for Lena," their voices a chorus against Hayes's hate. I stood before the crowd, my nose still bandaged, my heart pounding. "This isn't just my fight," I said, my voice breaking. "It's for every black soul Birmingham's tried to erase." The applause was thunder, but Hayes's absence worried me. Patel whispered that he'd been caught on tape plotting to intimidate Maria, his arrest imminent. Yet I knew men like Hayes didn't fall easily. His cousin Brooks's influence ran deep, their family a web of power that had choked Birmingham for years. Hayes's cruelty wasn't just personal, it was systemic, a machine that fed on black pain, and dismantling it would take more than murals or memos. As I left the mural, Malik handed me a poem he'd written, titled "Lena's Light," its lines about rising from shadows echoing my own verses from Fallujah. I hugged him, my tears falling, knowing he saw me not as a victim but as a fighter. Ruby approached, her voice soft. "I'm reopening tomorrow, Lena. Free meals for your camp kids." Her commitment, born of guilt but growing into resolve, was a step toward healing. Carter, standing at the crowd's edge, met my eyes, his nod a silent vow to keep fighting. Holmes's voice, over the phone, was fierce. "We're not done, Lena. Brooks is next." The fight was escalating, Birmingham's fault lines cracking open, and I felt both fear and fire. My PTSD stirred, but so did my purpose. I'd taught my kids to code for change, to write for truth. Now, I'd live it, for Maria, for Malik, for every black veteran buried by Hayes's hate. Birmingham's reckoning was coming, and I'd be its spark. The patrol car's back seat smelled of stale coffee and sweat, the cuffs cutting into my wrists as Birmingham streets blurred past, a city I'd once dreamed of calling home now feeling like a trap. I'm Lena Washington, a 36-year-old Army veteran, my nose still throbbing from Sergeant Daniel Hayes's fist, my mind racing with the weight of what had just happened at Ruby's diner. General Margaret Holmes's voice echoed in my head, her promise of a JAG team my only anchor as Hayes's planted evidence. A plastic bag I'd never touched, threatened to steal my freedom. The memory of Maria Gonzalez's trembling hands, filming my assault, stirred a mix of gratitude and guilt. Her courage as a single mom had put her in the crosshairs of a man like Hayes, whose cruelty I'd only begun to understand. My cheek pressed against the cold window, blood crusting on my lip, and I thought of the kids at my coding camp, how I'd taught them to build apps for change, urging them to dream bigger than their circumstances. Now, I wondered if my own dreams, of a life beyond my 2003 Chevy Impala, of a community that saw me as more than a stereotype, were foolish. The police station was a fluorescent maze, its hum drilling into my skull as Hayes shoved me into an interrogation room, his blue eyes glinting with a predator's glee. He wasn't just a bully, he was a maestro of control, his every move calculated to break me. I'd heard whispers at the VA about his quota games, targeting black folks like me to pad his arrest record, his badge a license to terrorize. "Sit tight, hero," he sneered, tossing the plastic bag onto the table. "You're looking at serious time." Officers Jamal Carter and Nathan Reed stood by the door, Carter's face unreadable, Reed's eyes darting with unease, a crack I filed away. I sat, hands cuffed, blood dripping onto my shirt, and felt the weight of my 14 years in the Army, where I'd earned a Distinguished Service Cross for saving 18 soldiers in Fallujah, 2008. That day, under a hail of fire, I'd dragged General Holmes's son from a burning convoy, his grateful mother promising me a debt she'd never repay. Now, that debt was my lifeline, but the weight was agony, each tick of the clock a reminder of how easily a black veteran could vanish into a system rigged against her. My mind drifted to my poetry workshop, a group of veterans meeting weekly at the library to weave our pain into verses. Last week, I'd shared a poem about Fallujah, the smoke and screams, how survival felt like betrayal when so many didn't make it. The group's nods, their quiet tears, had reminded me I wasn't alone. But here, in this sterile room, loneliness clawed at me. I'd been homeless for 5 months, my apartment condemned after a pipe burst, leaving me with $900 a month in disability pay, barely enough for gas and food. Birmingham's 10% black population meant I was never invisible, but always suspect, my service erased by assumptions about my skin. At the coding camp, I'd told my teens, mostly black and Latino kids from tough neighborhoods, that their apps could rewrite their futures. I'd believed it, but now, facing Hayes's smug grin, I wondered if I'd been naive, if the world would always see me as less than. General Holmes's call had shaken Hayes, but his arrogance was rebounding, his voice low as he leaned in. "You think one phone call changes anything? This is my city." His words were a venom, rooted in a belief that black lives like mine were disposable. I saw it in his eyes, a man who thrived on fear, who'd built a career on bending the law to fit his prejudice. Yet Reed's hesitation, his glance at the locked body camera, hinted at doubt, a thread I might pull later. Carter, though, was a mystery, his silence masking either loyalty or conflict. I held Hayes's gaze, my voice steady despite the pain. "You're wrong, Sergeant. People care." He laughed, but it was forced, a crack in his armor as the door opened and a desk sergeant announced, "JAG team's here. Body cams are frozen." Hayes's face tightened, his control slipping, and I felt a spark of hope, fragile but fierce. Maria's video was already spreading, I learned later, her shaky footage of Hayes's assault trending as #JusticeForLena on social media, shared by Birmingham's youth, some from my coding camp. Maria, risking her job and her son's future, had become a beacon, her courage amplifying my fight. I thought of her smile when she'd served my pancakes, her quiet pride in saving for her boy's college. Now, she faced Hayes's wrath, his vendetta likely to target her next. Guilt gnawed at me. She'd acted when others hadn't, and I owed her more than I could repay. Ruby, the diner's owner, had hesitated, her plea to the officers too late, but her guilt-ridden eyes suggested a woman wrestling with her silence. I wondered if she'd step up, if Birmingham's heart could shift, or if Hayes's grip was too tight. My PTSD, dormant for months, stirred in that room, the cuffs triggering memories of Fallujah's chaos, the weight of lives I couldn't save. I'd buried those ghosts in my poetry, in lines about stars over the desert, but now they whispered, "You're nothing." I pushed them back, focusing on Holmes's promise. She'd called me after Fallujah, her voice thick with gratitude, but I'd never asked for help, pride keeping me silent as I drifted from job to job, then to my car. Now, I saw that pride as a trap, isolating me when I needed allies. Holmes's guilt, I sensed, drove her now, guilt for not checking on me, for assuming I'd thrived. Her JAG team, led by Captain Aisha Patel, arrived with a clipboard and a glare that made Hayes flinch. "Uncuff her," Patel snapped, her voice cutting through his protests. "Medical attention, now." As a paramedic cleaned my nose, the pain sharp but grounding, I overheard Patel on the phone with Holmes, discussing DOJ involvement. Hayes hovered, his smirk gone, replaced by a calculating stare. He wasn't done, men like him never were. His power came from fear, from a system that shielded him, but Maria's video, my call, and Holmes's rank were unraveling that shield. I thought of my coding camp kids, how one had built an app to track community resources, his eyes bright with purpose. I'd told him, change starts with you. Now, I had to live that truth, not just for me, but for every black veteran dismissed, profiled, erased. Birmingham streets, lined with history, civil rights marches, church bombings, held ghosts of fighters who'd faced worse. I wasn't them, but I carried their fire, a resolve to expose Hayes's hate and the system that fed it. The paramedic finished, and Patel sat across from me, her eyes kind but firm. "Lena, we've got your back. Maria's video is airtight, and we're pulling Hayes's records." I nodded, my throat tight, thinking of my poetry workshop's last line, "We rise, not because we're fearless, but because we're family." Maria, Holmes, even Reed's flicker of doubt. They were my family now, bound by this fight. Hayes watched from the corner, his silence ominous, plotting his next move. I knew he'd strike back, his ego too brittle to yield. But I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into Ruby's diner, invisible and broken. I was Lena Washington, veteran, poet, mentor, and I'd fight, not just for justice, but for a Birmingham where no one else would bleed for being black. The Birmingham Federal Building's conference room was a fortress of paper and resolve, its walls plastered with timelines and photos that mapped Sergeant Daniel Hayes's reign of terror, a web of corruption that had ensnared my life and countless others. I'm Lena Washington, a 36-year-old Army veteran, my nose still tender from Hayes's fist, my heart heavy with the fight that had grown beyond me. Captain Aisha Patel's JAG team, backed by General Margaret Holmes, had unearthed a truth so vast it shook me. Hayes wasn't just a rogue cop, he was the spearhead of a system that bled Birmingham's black and Latino communities dry, his cousin Mayor Leonard Brooks its architect. As I sat, my hands steady but my mind racing, I thought of my coding camp kids, their mural of me now a beacon on Birmingham streets, and Maria Gonzalez, whose viral video had lit this fuse. Hayes's cold eyes haunted me, his vow to break us a promise he'd nearly kept, but the weight of new evidence, $10 million stolen, a regional network targeting black veterans, felt like a tide turning, though tragedy loomed close. Patel's voice was a blade, cutting through the room's hum. FBI traced $10 million from minority programs to Brooks's shell companies, funneled to Hayes's Unit 4 bonuses. The number staggered me. Money meant for Birmingham's black youth, for veterans like me struggling in my 2003 Chevy Impala, siphoned to fuel Hayes's hate. I thought of Malik, my coding camp teen, whose app now tracked community resources, his dream of a better Birmingham betrayed by Brooks's greed. Hayes had thrived in this shadow, his quota system memos, leaked by Officer Jamal Carter, detailing weekly targets for black arrests, each one a notch on his belt. Carter, once silent during my assault, now sat across from me, his eyes hollow with guilt. I was part of it, he admitted, his voice low. I thought I had no choice. His betrayal stung, but his courage to leak those memos, risking his badge, was a spark I hadn't expected, a black officer choosing truth over tribe. The investigation's scope widened, revealing a regional network targeting black veterans like me, profiled for our vulnerability, PTSD, homelessness, no powerful allies. Patel's team found memos linking Birmingham to Montgomery and Mobile, a coordinated effort to drive us out, Hayes's unit a model for others. I felt sick, my Fallujah scars aching as I realized my arrest wasn't random, I'd been a target, my distinguished service cross meaningless to a system that saw my skin first. General Holmes, her voice fierce over the phone, shared a secret that deepened the wound. Lena, Fallujah wasn't just a firefight, she said, her tone heavy. You stopped a leaked intel breach that saved hundreds. I should have told you. Her revelation, meant to honor me, felt like a burden, my sacrifice had saved lives, yet Birmingham had marked me for erasure. Her guilt, for not aiding me sooner, drove her now, her JAG team a relentless force. Tragedy struck, a gut punch none of us saw coming. Officer Nathan Reed, complicit in my arrest, was found dead in his home, a self-inflicted wound, his handwritten confession naming Hayes, Brooks, and Chief Laura Mitchell in a years-long conspiracy. Reed's note, read aloud by Patel, chilled me, I couldn't live with the lies anymore. Lena didn't deserve it. His death was a shockwave, splitting Birmingham's heart. Some saw it as proof of guilt, others as a martyr's sacrifice to Hayes's witch hunt. I felt grief, not for Reed's role, but for his torment, a man crushed by a system he'd upheld. His widow, Sarah, visited me, her eyes red, clutching a journal Reed had kept, detailing Hayes's orders to target black veterans. He wanted to stop, she whispered, handing me the journal. I saw her pain, a white woman confronting her husband's complicity, and I took her hand, my own tears falling, knowing forgiveness was harder than anger. Birmingham divided, its streets a mirror of its soul. Outside Ruby's Diner, now a hub for resistance, supporters clashed, veterans and teens with "Justice for Lena" signs faced back the blue crowds, some chanting Hayes's name. Ruby, wrestling her guilt, hosted truth forums, inviting black residents to share stories of profiling, her diner a sanctuary where pain became power. I was blind, Ruby told me, her voice firm. No more. Her forums, packed with 50 locals nightly, were a new light, but Hayes's allies fought back, slashing Ruby's tires, spray painting "snitch" on her door. Maria, still reeling from Hayes's threats, joined the forums, her voice shaking but clear. "My son deserves a city that sees him," she said, her courage a fire that warmed me, though I feared for her safety, her apartment now under JAG protection. A new idea took root. A National Veterans Summit, my vision to amplify black veterans' voices, born from my poetry workshop's call for truth. I pitched it to Holmes, my hands sweating. "We need a platform, General, to show this isn't just Birmingham." She agreed, securing a venue in D.C., 800 miles away, with 200 veterans invited. My coding camp kids designed an app for the summit, streaming stories of discrimination, Malik's pride a mirror of my own. The summit wasn't just a plan. It was a lifeline, a way to honor Reed's confession, to make my pain mean something. Yet Hayes's shadow lingered. Patel uncovered his bank records, showing payoffs from Brooks's companies, his wealth built on stolen futures. Hayes, on administrative leave, appeared on local radio, calling me a fraud, his voice slick with lies, rallying his base. His desperation was a warning, he'd fight dirtier now, his cousin Brooks's influence a shield. Maria's strength grew, her forum speech trending online, #MariaSpeaks joining #JusticeForLena. She visited me, her son Miguel clutching a drawing of the mural, me as a hero. "He believes in you," she said, and I hugged her, my guilt easing. Ruby's forums drew Carter, who spoke publicly, his voice breaking. "I profiled my own people," he confessed, tears falling. His honesty cracked Birmingham's silence, more officers whispering to Patel, fearing Hayes's wrath. Holmes, watching the summit plans, called me. "Lena, you're rewriting history." Her pride warmed me, but my PTSD stirred, nightmares of Fallujah blending with Hayes's fist. I wrote a new poem, Birmingham's Bones, its lines about rising from graves shared at Ruby's, 60 voices reciting it, a chorus against hate. As the summit neared, Brooks's denial crumbled. Patel's team raided his office, finding emails linking him to Hayes's quotas, his signature on fund transfers. He held a press conference, 500 feet from the federal building, blaming outside agitators, but his sweat betrayed him. Hayes's radio rants grew frantic, his base shrinking as Reed's journal leaked online, Sarah's act a quiet rebellion. Birmingham's murals multiplied, 5 new walls painted with black veterans' faces, my kids' app tracking each one. The city's heart was shifting, but Hayes's silence was ominous, his next move a storm I sensed brewing. I stood at Ruby's, watching 70 locals share stories, Maria's hand in mine, Carter's nod across the room, Holmes's voice in my ear. My fight had exposed a system that fed on black pain, but it had also birthed a family, veterans, teens, a diner owner, a repentant cop, united for truth. Birmingham's reckoning was here, and I'd face Hayes's storm, not alone, but as a flame for justice. The Birmingham Federal Courthouse pulsed with quiet anticipation, its packed gallery a mosaic of hope and reckoning as I stood, my heart a drumbeat of resolve. I'm Lena Washington, a 36-year-old Army veteran, once shattered by Sergeant Daniel Hayes's fist at Ruby's Diner, now a pillar in a city reborn. 7 months after my wrongful arrest, Judge Amara Jenkins's gavel fell, sentencing Hayes to 18 years for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy, his cousin Mayor Leonard Brooks to 22 years for fraud, and Chief Laura Mitchell to 10 years for obstruction. Over 40 officials faced charges, a purge of Birmingham's corrupt soul, but I felt no glee, only a fire to rebuild what racism had torn apart. My coding camp teens mural, now one of 7 across the city, glowed with our defiance, while Maria Gonzalez's courage and Ruby's redemption stitched a new Birmingham, where black lives like mine stood tall. As General Margaret Holmes squeezed my hand, I saw my poetry workshop's truth. We rise, not because we're fearless, but because we're family, and knew our work was far from done. Judge Jenkins's voice was a clarion, her verdict a blade against injustice. Mr. Hayes, you preyed on black veterans like Lena Washington, twisting their service into a target for your hate. This court demands justice. Hayes's eyes, once cold with power, were hollow, his defeat a shadow of the system he'd weaponized. He'd smeared my PTSD, called me a fraud, but my Distinguished Service Cross, earned saving 18 soldiers in Fallujah, shone undeniable. Officer Nathan Reed's suicide, his confession exposing Hayes's web, and Officer Jamal Carter's leaked memos had sealed this fate. Carter, now outside, head bowed, was a black officer remade by truth, his redemption a mirror to Birmingham's own. Hayes's final glance at me, as he was led away, held no venom, only the echo of a broken man, his hate no match for our unity. Birmingham's streets hummed with renewal, its scars softening under hope's light. Ruby's Diner, reborn as Heroes Haven, was a heartbeat 7 miles from downtown, its 60 seats alive with veterans and youth. Ruby, her guilt now purpose, launched job training, teaching 30 veterans monthly to code, cook, or run businesses, her diner a sanctuary for second chances. For you, Lena, she said, her smile warm as we served 50 free meals to homeless folks, my coding camp teens helping, Malik's app guiding veterans to jobs and homes. My $1. 5 million settlement, free of an NDA, seeded the Washington Homes Foundation, housing 300 veterans, funding therapy, and creating jobs. My podcast, Voices Unerased, broadcast from Heroes Haven, reached 2 million listeners with black veteran stories, each episode a thread in Birmingham's healing tapestry. Maria Gonzalez, once a waitress risking all to film Hayes's assault, stood radiant, her civic award gleaming as she accepted a journalism fellowship. For Miguel, she said at the ceremony, her 8-year-old son beaming, free from fear. Her community healing circles at Heroes Haven, drawing 80 locals weekly, wove black and white stories of profiling into bonds of understanding. You showed me how, she told me, her grip fierce, and I hugged her, my guilt for her risks fading under her light. Her hashtag Maria Speaks, paired with hashtag Justice for Lena, sparked probes in Montgomery and Mobile, exposing similar targeting of black veterans. Maria's journey, from single mom to national voice, was Birmingham's pride, proof that one spark could ignite a movement. General Holmes, her 5 stars retired, joined me on Birmingham's Civilian Oversight Board, where I co-chaired. Your family, she said, her voice thick, her guilt for my struggles now a force for reform. The new police force, under Commissioner Aisha Patel, mandated body cameras, bias training, and open records, its 200 officers vetted to erase Hayes's shadow. I toured its glass-walled headquarters, 3 miles from Heroes Haven, watching citizens shape policy, my heart swelling at a system bending toward fairness. Patel's public apology, broadcast 500 feet from the courthouse, vowed, "We serve all Birmingham." My foundation's policy council, advising state lawmakers, secured veteran protections, its work echoing 1,200 miles to D.C., where my Veterans Summit inspired federal change. Heroes Haven was more than a diner, it was a revolution. My coding camp grew, training 100 teens yearly, their apps fighting food insecurity and police bias, Malik's leadership my mirror. Poetry slams, blending my Fallujah verses with kids' rhymes, filled Heroes Haven with 90 voices, a chorus of resilience. Jamal Carter, now a civilian mentor, taught my teens conflict resolution, his shame a bridge to redemption. "I owe you," he said, eyes wet, and I smiled, "you're paying it forward." Maria's healing circles welcomed Hayes's former allies, some confessing complicity, their truths a painful step toward unity. Birmingham wasn't flawless, protests lingered, some clutching "back the blue" signs, but Heroes Haven's glow, 46 degrees Fahrenheit nights drawing 100 locals, offered free meals and poetry, forging a new community. My PTSD, a quiet shadow, eased as I mentored Aisha, a 19-year-old veteran in her car, guiding her through VA forms. "You're enough," I told her, my past a map for her future, her shy nod my victory. Sarah Reed, Nathan's widow, shared his journal on my podcast, her voice breaking, a plea for forgiveness. "He'd be proud," she said, and I nodded, truth our hardest win. One night, at Heroes Haven, I sat with Maria, Ruby, Holmes, and Carter, our booth the one where Hayes cuffed me. We laughed, 60 locals around us, their chatter a song of hope. "What if I hadn't called?" I asked. Maria grinned, "What if I hadn't filmed?" One choice changes it all. Holmes nodded, "You built this, Lena." I looked out, seeing Malik serve meals, Aisha write poetry, Birmingham's murals shining. My foundation housed 300, my podcast reached millions, but this family, forged in fire, was my legacy. Reflecting on my journey, I see a path from invisibility to impact, from a bloodied diner floor to a city's rebirth. I learned that courage isn't fearless. It's acting despite fear, like Maria's video or Carter's confession. I learned that systems, like Birmingham's, thrive on silence, but truth, spoken together, can dismantle them. I learned that personal scars, like my PTSD, are strengths when shared, binding us as family. Most of all, I learned that one voice, mine, a black veteran's, can spark a movement, not because of rank, but because of resolve. If you were in a similar situation, with elements like architectural processing, structuring a fight for justice, or differentiation, standing out against hate, with personal achievement, like my cross, or real status, like my homelessness, how would you approach it to achieve the best outcome? Would you risk all, like Maria, or rebuild, like Ruby? Birmingham taught me that every choice matters, and I choose to rise, to speak, to build, knowing justice is a fire we all must tend.